Well, Joyce and I just celebrated our 33rd wedding anniversary. And we've actually been living together for 34 years. And just called to my attention that the most important person in my life, the previous 24 years, was Joe Matthews. And I first met Joe Matthews when I was in college. He came doing a religious emphasis week at Oklahoma State University. And I was already kind of an active person in the Methodist student movement, an officer in the state structure, president of the state structure, went to conferences around and had some spiritual awakenments of some sorts, with the study of mathematics and physics and Einsteinian things and hypnotism and the New Testament, especially for Sermon on the Mount somehow. So I was thinking about the ministry instead of the mathematics career before he showed up, but his charisma in that time just settled my decision of where I went to seminary. I was going to go to Perkins School of Theology where he was teaching. And so I began there in '53. And Frank Hilliard was my roommate that first year. And then I married my first wife. But my work with Joe Matthews was, for 24 years, just more really central in my life. And seminary was a time in which I was not only his student, became a friend, and he would use some of us to help him teach classes in my senior time there. And then when I left the seminary, I had to go in the Army as a chaplain for a while. But even then, I kept track with the Christian Faith and Life community where Joe was, and then when they went to Chicago, I joined them. I and my first wife and children were the first interns in the Order Ecumenical. It was just forming in Evanston, Illinois. And Joe Matthews was living in the coal bin, that's the word I was looking for, in the basement of this big house where everybody else was living. There were 9 families of us in total. And he divided he and Lynn, Evanston, Illinois. He and Lynn divided the coal bin in half for Ruth and I to live in the other half of it. So that was my introduction to the new religious order. That was a wonderful experience for me because I was learning to teach from great teachers like Joe Matthews and Joe Slicker and others who had already been teaching these wonderful curricula for a long time. And so I spent the next 24 years working in that religious order, and my main forte was becoming a teacher of these methods. And Joe Matthews was the kind of creative person that he just kept inventing things, inventing more things. And I became dean of the academy, they called it, which was an 8-week residential program that taught everything practically that had been researched up to that time to 100 to 200 students on an 8-week basis. And so I had the wonderful position of playing the role of taking all this wonderful stuff Matthews created and tried to boil it down to curriculum that could be taught in this program. And then I met Joyce in the latter end of this time, and she was one of the teachers of that academy with me. And then since leaving the order in '76, I began living with Joyce, and then she's been my main mentor since Matthews died. So I divide my life into 3 parts: before Joe Matthews, during Joe Matthews, and with Joyce.
What year was that you moved to Evanston?
'62.
That was in '62. Okay. All right. Very helpful. And so, Joyce, how did you enter when did you enter the picture and begin?
Well, I ran into the Ecumenical Institute through RS1 in 1971. Actually, I was going to the Methodist church. I married a Methodist. And they had a new Methodist curriculum at one point. And I don't know if y'all remember that, it was in the 60s. I think it was about 64, and that's where I met Paul Tillich, was in that new curriculum. And there was something about the virgin birth, and I remember I was a Sunday school teacher of young people, but there were some of us teachers who met together to do this new curriculum, not on Sunday at another time, and some of them were very upset with me because I was really digging into this stuff, you know, and asking a lot of questions that were uncomfortable for people. So I went to the small public library. It was in Roswell, New Mexico, and I found everything by Tillich and everything else on that shelf. There was some Altizer and other things too, and it's like, wow.
And what year was that?
Well, I think it was like 64, 65,
Okay.
something
All
like
right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
My copies of Tillich's sermons that I bought for myself are dated 1968. That's when I bought those. So I was into that sort of thing. So then we'd moved to Amarillo, where my husband was music director of Polk Street Methodist, big Methodist church in Amarillo. And you may know Tom Hostott. He was the director of the symphony, the Amarillo Symphony, and he was closely connected to the Institute, and he set up a lot of RS1 courses in the Amarillo area. So in 1971, one of my friends in the church who knew that I always upset people in Sunday school classes asking questions, she said, I think you'd like this course. So I went to this RS1 course. Well, by that time, I'd about decided maybe I'm an atheist. And so I was just kind of like Alan was smiling all through the symposium. I was smiling all through this course. I just loved it. And it was like, wow, here's some people that not only see all this stuff, they understand it, but they put it together and lived out of it all these years. There's a whole community of them. Wow, wow, wow. I was just so excited. So then in 72, they moved to Religious House to Amarillo, and that was another boon for me. And so I was over there at 6 every morning doing their pedagogy, blah, 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 whatever they had, I was there. Ecclesiola's on Wednesday night. And then in 72, the Grahams, I can't think, Stuart and you may know them, Grahams, young couple that were there at the house, came over to visit me and convinced me I should go to Academy. It was the first thing I ever did that my husband vetoed, and I did it anyway. I was on a plane. I went to Chicago and spent a month in the ghetto. That was at the program center there in the Fifth City area. This big building was
1972.
72.
Okay.
I did the first month, I think it was fall of 72. And actually I didn't meet Gene at that time. He was in Australia doing the ITIs, and John Baggett was dean. Stanfield was there, and Shropshire, met all them, and about 250 people from all over the world in this ghetto, and rats and all, and I loved it. When I went back to our house in Amarillo, it just seemed like a palace, and I couldn't stand being so indulged. I just loved living there in the ghetto in my little cot and other cots stacked around, you know, and just the blankets separating. It was just fantastic. Doris Hahn was just a saint to me. I just sat and ate up everything she said. So that was, when I came back from Academy, I just felt like that I used to sink into things that went clear to the bottom, but after Academy there was something that stopped right here. You know, it's like, I don't know how, that's how I experienced it in my body, that there was just something solid there. And then I did the second month of Academy the next spring of 73, and that's when I met you. And by then it was over at, it was still in Fifth City, but it was over at the seminary. Bethany, whatever that whole, had the gymnasium where we had the balls and all the different, we had the, or maybe it was, no, it was the chapel where we had the balls, and the gymnasium where we had daily office, you know, and all the, I love daily office. I would go home after Academy and I would do it by myself. I just missed it, so I just ate it up. This stuff was just like manna to me. And so I did meet Gene there I don't know that he really knew who I was exactly, but then in 70, I got a divorce then in 75. It was clear for many years that my husband and I were definitely on different tracks, and this sort of solidified it for me. And then I guess it was at a summer program, probably 75 summer program, that later in 75 that Nancy Lanfear suggested to you that I might be someone to be on Academy staff, and you and I met. That's when I guess we had known each other sort of in the other academies that I attended, but you wanted me to come and teach on Academy staff. And Nancy, she and Fred were at the Amarillo house at the time. So I say I was at the house a lot. In fact, I lived at the house for a while. I wasn't in the order, but I lived at the house. Definitely a part of the cadre. And so we taught together on Academy staff, 3 or 4 times, I guess. I helped him when we moved the Academy over to Kemper, and we taught it over there. And Gene and I he and Brian Stanfield and I we were like the 3 on the staff that we'd get together and talk things over and work things out. We just clicked together. We became really close colleagues and very good friends. And then at one point, we decided we maybe wanted to be together longer than that. Well, I can't speak for the general, but for myself, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and a great gift in many ways, and of course, many shortcomings as well that I've discovered. But when I attended that first RS1, it was like I can be religious and live in this world, this modern world, and ask all the questions, have all the doubts that I have. I can be intellectually honest. I don't have to dumb down my mind. I don't have to manipulate my emotions. I can be absolutely real and still be religious. And that was just a gift beyond compare for me.